Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of PwC's Family Office podcast. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Hugh Obbard from Obbard. So Hugh, over to you. Perhaps you could introduce yourself and what Obbard does.
Sure, thanks Lisa. Well, we have been helping our clients invest into London, particularly prime central London, for over 30 years. And our clients have been very broad in where they have originated from, with a bias to overseas. And we have founded in the early 90s, so we've seen a lot of changes over the last 30 odd years. And we are basically a company who look at the strategy that our clients are considering, or coming up with strategies for their property ownership in London. And that could be for their own personal use, for investment use. It could be because they own multiple properties or looking to develop portfolios. And when I say strategy, that is because we look at all options from the point of view of from acquisition through to the disposal, through to the letting, the management, and the refurbishment, and the ongoing asset management. And we look at this in the whole, and then when we come up with a strategy that suits the client's needs and long-term objectives, we're the ones who then also execute that strategy. And I think that's the key difference with us. So within our capabilities and our team here, we have really, this is probably more so on the refurbishment and the value add side. We have our own designers, our own architects, project managers, QS, etc.
Okay.
So our focus is very much on delivering a strategy and executing a strategy around their residential needs.
Got it. And I'm going to guess that in the last 30 years, the market has changed more than once.
It has changed more than once. And I was just scribbling down before. I mean, when I started, there was a sort of a wonderful growth up, a nice smooth upward growth curve, which took us from sort of the early 90s into basically to the financial crisis, in 2008. Which was somewhat of a hiatus, of course. And then coming out of that, there was another sort of great growth spurt, which was on the back of cheap money. And those who had money basically could access that cheap money. And we had another great growth spurt. And then, of course, coming from around about sort of 2014, when the market in London peaked, the main issue has been all the tax changes and how residential property particularly has become very political. And that's not just limited to the UK. And I used to work in the Far East, in Hong Kong, Singapore, Indonesia, places like that. And Hong Kong, I think, was the first to introduce the 15% stamp duty, and Singapore, up until recently, was doing 60%.
Ouch.
So, ouch. So it's a common theme, this now, and so that has been the biggest headwind facing our market in over the course of the last 10 years.
And so we're going to be talking about prime central London. For anyone listening who's not super familiar with London, where is prime central London?
Probably you can break it down to the two big boroughs, which are Kensington and Chelsea and Westminster. So the sort of the platinum triangle, as it were, is Mayfair, Belgravia, Knightsbridge. And then you would add to that Chelsea, Notting Hill, St John's Wood. And then there are a few sort of growing areas that have sort of have joined it. Like there's an area south of the Thames around Waterloo Station, which doesn't sound very glamorous, but it's sort of directly the other side of where if you took a straight line, you'd be into Covent Garden and places like that. But it's funny, when people look at London and look at where is central London, you find people tend to look at Hyde Park and what's around Hyde Park. Whereas a lot of the activity at the moment is actually happening a little bit further east of Piccadilly and sort of into Shoreditch and the East End, which is where a lot of the affordability for the younger generation is there. But it's where the tech sector is, and that's what's giving that this huge boost.
So you touched on the headwinds at the moment, and particularly tax, which obviously we've seen quite a lot of movement around that. So what makes prime central London compelling then in today's global environment?
I think the obvious standout is the heavy discount it is now to where it was 10 years ago. It's widely accepted now that prime central London prices on average are off 20 to 25% from where their peak was of 10 years ago. And inflation adjusted, that's a big, big adjustment.
Yeah.
But we have, just before Christmas, we believe agreed to buy something around about 35% off what it was bought for in 2014.
Wow,
and we just agreed something in the area I was mentioning near Waterloo, the South Bank, which is near 40% off what it was in 2015. So there's some big, big discounts. And with the stamp duty having gone from a sort of very palatable 5% to, say, 15%, that sort of tax hit has been well and truly priced in. Unwelcome, though, as it is, but it has been well and truly priced in.
Yeah, so painful for sellers, but a good opportunity for buyers. And how do your clients think about London when they're thinking about other global cities?
It's funny with the London. Obviously, with the non-dom situation changing so rapidly, very widely publicised, has been this big exodus as people have moved to Milan or to Zurich or to Dubai or whatever, and that definitely has been a noticeable trend. But what you scratch the surface with these London quitters, as it were, and they've all got one foot still or a toe back here. They want to come back.
Yeah.
They're not moving to Milan long term or even Zurich or what have you. So I think that there's a sort of there is the sentiment on London is quite negative at the moment. There's no doubt about it. It's not the city that everybody loved. It's sort of had the brand has been hit by the decisions made by not just the current government, but just the sort of the political soap opera that we had really ever since the sort of the Brexit vote happened, and that has tarnished London for sure. But I think a lot of the bad press is very overstated. Most people who live in London don't wander around thinking they're going to be knifed every minute, and and the streets are. I live in Kensington and Chelsea, and I get my rubbish collected twice a week. There are not many cities in the world that happens, you know.
No.
So it still is a great city, and I think, and a lot of people still love coming here. The tax thing is a real bitter pill, and it upsets people because it constrains their ability to come and go and stay here as they might otherwise have done.
Yeah.
So, but when we're not seeing a very obvious alternative apart from perhaps, and it's quite a generational thing, the sort of the younger generation, sort of under 35s, maybe under 40s, who see Dubai as the land of gold and honey.
Yeah. But it's interesting what you say about non-doms, because a lot of our clients actually who've left have indeed kept a foothold, and the foothold is their property. So some of them have tried to sell and then decided to rent it out instead, and are managing their day count to make sure they're not UK tax resident. But I think you're right. A lot of people, they do love London, and I think it's still a great global city in terms of everything that you can access. So I think it's definitely not the end of London, right?
I mean, I give you a sort of a small little case study. We have a client who's a sort of very well-known sort of high profile banker, and they had their dream property in Notting Hill, and it's a very special property. And they were moving to Italy, and they thought, well, we're going to have to sell the house, and the husband in particular really didn't want to rent it out. He didn't like the idea of just anyone living in this what it was a very special property. And the letting agents would say, oh, we could get a footballer who could rent this, to pay you a huge rent, and that's exactly who we didn't want renting his house. And anyway, when it came to strategy, we discussed with him how they could perhaps find the right sort of profile of tenant to live in the house, what needed to be done to the house in order to make sure that the tenant it suited what an international tenant would want, and and we did do a sort of about a 3-month sort of soft freshen up and cosmetic tweak on the house, and we put the tenant in there, and he happens to be someone who he doesn't know personally, but in the world of finance, he knows very well, and all the rest of it, which was a big tick, and he was prepared to potentially forego £570,000 a year rather than not have the property rented. And it's just that sort of peace of mind, really, that someone is actually giving good advice and managing their asset. And so, going back to the point we were making, so yes, they're in Milan now, but they definitely want and hope to be coming back and living in that house at some point.
Yeah, and I think having that neutral voice when it comes to your property, if it's somewhere you've lived, the connection you have to it, it does make it hard to see it through neutral eyes. So I can see you have.
We had another situation where we ended up, it's not really what we do, but a very, very special house in Hazelmere in Surrey, which is about an hour and a half from London.
Yeah.
And the people who owned that, they were actually renting one of our other higher value properties, and this was their family home they went to in for the weekends, but they rented in London. And it was a very, very similar situation about who's going to look after my interests of my home, because I mean, whether you're doing 1,000 a week or 11,000 a week, the tenants can be very mixed in there. How do they look after people's properties?
Yeah, I can imagine. And so, where is the current demand coming from then? Is it people already in the UK, or are you seeing more from overseas? And if overseas, from which jurisdictions?
Well, it's really broad. I mean, what is quite interesting at the moment is that it is so broad, and I mean, I'll give you just be a rundown of the sort of clients that we're dealing with at the moment, and this is in the various disciplines we do. We do quite a large number of refurbishments, so we have that side of our business, and on the acquisition side, and then on the sales side. But I was just doing this prior to this meeting, thinking, so we've got a client in Hong Kong, who's a UK expatriate in Hong Kong, which was very much sort of one of our sort of core client base. We've got a French client looking to buy a high value property. We're about to we are starting a very big refurbishment on a big flat bought in Kensington near Hyde Park for a Nigerian client.
Yeah.
We've got back in Hong Kong again, Indian Hong Kong client. We have a US investors who were this is actually on a hotel, and then we've got a US UK couple who just completed a house in Notting Hill for them, which was bought back in the summer, and then we've got quite a lot of interest with discussions with clients who've sort of sent over from Dubai and Bahrain, particularly. Who are looking at the market, and I'll be honest and say there's an awful lot of sort of looking, understanding it, getting a feel for it.
Yeah.
And there's not the starting gun hasn't quite been fired yet, but you sort of feel
it's on its
way, getting close to that point.
Yeah. So I mean, it's an incredibly diverse range of interest that you're seeing, and let's assume now that we've bought our property and we're looking at value creation. What improvements, when you mentioned about renovations, what improvements do you see actually genuinely driving capital appreciation in prime central London?
I mean, in simple terms, it's making it relevant to how people want to live today. That's what people want. So it's space configuration to reflect how people live today. So, I mean, if you're not talking about a large, 6,000 square foot house or a massive apartment, or so, if you're talking about 2,000-3,000 square feet, and people are sort of buying that sort of property as a second home to them, they don't have separate dining rooms and things. They have, open plan kitchens, and the big influence on residential property for a long time now has been hotels, where the bar has gone forever higher and higher. So what people go and stay in lovely hotels, and they come back and go, oh, I really love that huge bathroom. I want that. Particularly, I mean, this is a little bit of an old story because the UK used to do really bad bathrooms. I mean, we bathrooms are always tiny, but now, they're as big as the bedroom. I mean, the opportunity really here now is that because the stamp duty levy has been such a big hit and erodes so much profit for small to medium-sized developers, a lot of them have exited the market. So, so tired, unmodernized property is just sitting around and not selling because most buyers don't have the inclination to do major renovations. Like, how am I going to manage it, and who's going to do it? And then all these horror stories of builders and inflation and prices just escalating, etc. So there's a sort of there's a lot of property sitting around which is looking tired and unloved. And in fact, if you were to go to say where do we see activity in the market, which is sort of seeing prices hold up well, at the extreme, it's still these sort of high-level branded residences, which are, super high-end, high outgoings, fully concierged, etc. But some clients don't like that. They don't want to live in a quasi-hotel environment where you're walking in and out when having to say hello and goodbye to the concierge every morning, every time you nip out and all the rest of it. So, for example, this Nigerian, you know what I mean? It sort of doesn't feel like a home. So, for example, this apartment where I mentioned in near the Albert Hall, I mean, that's a fully ported building and all the rest of it, but it feels much more discreet and private. And the difficulty is to find something in a building like that where it's all been done, ready and turnkey.
Yeah. Although I guess if you have a concierge, for example, it does give you peace of mind if you're outside of the UK owning a property in the UK. Because what other risks are there that you see of, let's call it, absentee ownership?
Yeah, I mean, there's sort of worry that you're not there, and what's happening to my property. I can get that, and I mean we do a lot of the properties we buy for clients. We do that management for them. We're still there on hand. We pay the bills, and we service the aircon, and we do this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
But for sure, there's that great peace of mind in a building with a concierge where you can literally tell them to do X, Y, and Z. But it comes at a hell of a price.
Yeah, no doubt.
I mean, these service charges. I mean, they're all dressed, and they're getting increasingly more expensive as well. The inflation in service charges has probably outstripped most costs as far as I can see. They keep coming through as high-water increases.
Yeah.
It's not difficult, actually. I mean, not even just forgetting ourselves. It's not difficult to get someone who is like a sort of a bespoke concierge management company can look after your property at a much more of a reasonable price, much more bespoke to your needs.
Yeah. Well, Hugh, thank you for this canter through the prime central London real estate market and where you see opportunities. One last question. So if we think across the whole of London and you assume that you have unlimited funds, which property would you buy? What's the thing you look at and think, yeah, I like that?
Okay. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of things we've been involved in because they're sort of very real and I know them. One is a lateral apartment in Grosvenor Square, about 3,500 square feet in the middle of the square, which is a real refurbishment opportunity. And it's just a super, super prime address. You don't really get much better than Grosvenor Square. Mayfair's sort of where it is all at. So that's one. And the other was from a pure. That's if I was buying for my own use, but from an investor point of view, we developed for a client of ours, number 1 St James's, which is on the corner of St James's Street and Pall Mall, looking over St James's Palace. And that was developed into seven flats, and that was just such an iconic location. It was a proper trophy. And sometimes people talk about trophies, which is another word for expensive. This is a proper trophy. And it was just a beautiful building, and that and the person who actually bought that, we still look after it for them, and that was they bought it for the very reason that they wanted something that would be held intergenerationally as a really special property.
Brilliant.
I'd be happy with that one.
Yeah. Well, I mean, me too. So Hugh, thank you so much for joining us, and to everyone else for listening, and we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Lisa.